friends. The topic for today is war poets. Now, before I begin with the topic, let me first situate the war poets in the broader spectrum or the broader umbrella of history of English literature. The war poets normally we study as a part of early modern age. The war that we are talking about here is the First World War. And the war poets, as the title you can see, they are called war poets, or they are also many a times referred to as the soldier poets. Yes, they are also referred to as soldier poets. Now, they are referred to as soldier poets because they have participated in the First World War as soldiers. And as the name itself suggests, war poets, the theme that they deal with in their poetry is basically war. And again, we are going to learn three poets. There are many war poets, but three major war poets we are going to learn in the course of this lecture series. And before that, I will be introducing you to first these three major poets, and then we will be looking at the poetry, the poems that we have on our syllabus. So, moving on, the first poet that we have is Wilfred Owen. Now, Wilfred Owen's story is quite interesting. As a young man, he was enrolled into the British Army, and he was barely 21 years old when he was enrolled for the First World War. As you can see on the slide, I have a few interesting details as well as image of Wilfred Owen. That's the last image that was taken of him, most probably as a soldier during the First World War. And you can see how youthful his photograph is. And in all, he has published only 5 poems. And the reason being behind it is that he died during the First World War. And yes, I did mention that he was 21 years. It is believed that he was barely 21 years old when he was enrolled in the British Army to fight in the First World War. And he could only publish 5 poems, 5 war poems during his lifetime. And maybe if he had been alive, we would have had many more examples of his excellent poetry, and we would have studied many more poems by Wilfred Owen. But moving on, what does Wilfred Owen? You have to understand one thing, that each of the poets who are labeled under the war poets, they deal with different aspects of the war. So if we have to talk about Wilfred Owen, as you can see on the screen right now, he describes harrowing, he gives a very harrowing, or you can say very frightening, scary kind of descriptions of combat, on battlefield, the fight that is going on between the two armies, armed battle that is going on. He gives very horrible descriptions of that battle in his poems. Not only that, it is his own experiences. He has been witness to all this. And undoubtedly, though he has written only 5 poems, he is considered to be one of the towering figures of World War I literature. So, he was barely 21 years old when the war broke out. Now, the First World War broke out in 1914 and it came to end somewhere around November 1918. So, if you, as I mentioned, that Wilfred Owen, he died in the First World War. So, that again is very interesting that if you notice, he was barely 21 when he died. And he was enlisted into the British Army in 1915. That is 1 year after the war broke out. And later he took part in heavy fighting in France. And heavy fighting, obviously you have to expect a lot of bombing, artillery, guns, whatever technology was invented by then. It was in a warfare was being utilized during the First World War, and especially it is believed that the First World War has been one of the most dreadful world wars recorded in history, because many lives were lost, many became handicapped, and many innocent lives, not only just soldiers, but many innocent lives were lost during the First World War. Apart from that, Wilfred Owen took a lot of pride. Personally, he took a lot of pride in the fact that he was a soldier representing his country during the First World War. But later on, as he became a part of the First World War, there were many realizations that dawned on Wilfred Owen. And it is those realizations, whatever he has witnessed in the war, that is what he has recorded in his poems. And they are as a result of the realizations that he had when he was fighting during the First World War. Now, it is believed that he told his mother, that is, he wrote a letter to his mother from the battlefield that, I quote, "I have not been at the front." Now, here front refers to the battlefield. So, what he means to say is that I'm not just on the front, I'm not just on the battlefield, but, I quote, "I have been in front of it." So, I have been in front of it. Now, the front here has a different meaning, that is taking an initiative. So, as a soldier, he was someone who was very enthusiastic, he was very fierce on the battlefield. His courage and bravery is very well noted in history. If you read his biography, you will understand that. And he very actively took part during the First World War and took many wounds also. And he was very badly wounded by a shell also during the First World War. But in spite of that, he showed a lot of courage in saving his fellow soldiers, wounded soldiers, by, though he was wounded, he carried his fellow wounded soldiers to safety. And these are the acts of bravery that he has involved himself in. So, with a lot of pride, he mentions to his mother that I'm not only on the battlefield, but I am at the forefront, fighting on behalf of my country. Now, as the history says that he was diagnosed with shell shock. Another aspect that we need to understand when we are dealing with war poets, and especially the soldier poets, war poets, soldier poets, it is more or less synonymous, is that it is not only the physical wounds that we are talking about, but it is also the mental wounds that they have suffered. Because when you witness something like a war, bombing, shelling, and you are constantly living in trenches trying to save your lives, naturally, it is not an easy task. It's a very arduous kind of a life where at any moment your life can be lost. At the same time, you have to protect yourself, you have to kill the enemy, and at the same time, you have to witness lots of death and maiming of many of the fellow soldiers. Many of the fellow soldiers getting wounded, losing an arm or a leg, and many a times, in front of your eyes, there might be some soldiers who are beheaded. They may lose their heads. So it's a very gory kind of, horrible kind of spectacle that these soldiers experience. Wilfred Owen experienced, and all these experiences, they do affect you mentally a lot. So even Wilfred Owen, being a soldier, he suffers both physical as well as mental injuries, which he has to recuperate. So he's diagnosed with shell shock, that is, he's physically very badly hurt due to a bombing, a shell explosion in 1917, and he's sent to recover in a hospital in Scotland. And it is believed that here he also met Siegfried Sassoon, who is another very famous war poet. We will be looking at Siegfried Sassoon also in the next slide. He met Siegfried Sassoon, who was his senior as a poet as well as a soldier. And it is believed that it is a lot of inspiration that he drew from Siegfried Sassoon that he puts on paper in the form of poetry. It is all the discussions that he has with Siegfried Sassoon about their war experiences. Obviously, they were fighting at different fronts in different countries, and they share their experiences. And it is here that Wilfred Owen, he draws a lot of inspiration, being a very young, he is a very young soldier with barely the experience of World War I. that he sees around him, few years of war experience. So it is Siegfried Sassoon who inspires him to write poetry, to describe in his poems what he sees in front of him, what he witnesses on day-to-day basis during the war on the battlefield. So it is here that it is in the hospital where, he starts scribbling down his experiences, he starts writing down his experiences of war on the suggestion of, as I told you, that it is the inspiration that he draws from his senior, that is Siegfried Sassoon, that he starts writing somewhere around 1916 to 1918, that the war period time till he died, he writes those 5 poems. Right? He has produced many of those famous works, and one of them we are going to deal with in this lecture series is Anthem for Doomed Youth. Wilfred Owen's Anthem for Doomed Youth is one of his very famous poems, war poems that he has written. Apart from that, he has also written Strange Meeting. He has also written Dulce et Decorum Est. If we have to rank the poems that he has written in the sequence of superiority, it is normally believed that Dulce et Decorum Est is Owen's best war poem, and second in ranking comes Anthem for Doomed Youth, which we are going to look at, which is also a part of our syllabus. So Dulce et Decorum Est, this particular poem, which is considered to be his best poem, it deals with, or it describes, the gas attack in a very grim detail. In a very serious way, he describes the gas attack that takes place, the soldiers who are hiding in the trenches, one way of pulling them out. They are like rats hiding in a hole. So if you want to pull out the soldiers from the trenches, what they would do is they would throw a shell containing gas, and because of the gas, the soldiers are unable to breathe. They get suffocated in the trenches, and they have no other choice but they have to scramble out of those trenches. So these are the kind of experiences that they have in battle. And these are the kind of experiences, this gas attack is the one that he describes in his best of the poems that I just talked about. The other poem that we'll be looking at is Anthem for Doomed Youth, right? Now, apart from that, what makes Anthem for Doomed Youth, which is there on our syllabus, worth reading for under this particular topic, that is war poets, is that as I told you, that he was barely 21 when he participated in the war. And initially, as a soldier, he took a lot of pride, and he felt very heroic that he was participating as a soldier in the First World War. It is only when he witnesses the, brutality and cruelty of war that his impressions about war heroism and the glorification of war, which is normally done, changes. And he realizes that there is no glory, or there is no heroism in war, or no heroism in what a soldier does, right? And despite his there is a lot of opposition that he shows towards war. And despite his opposition of war, he described soldiers being sent to die as cattle. One of the forms of protest, his way of protesting, is the metaphor that he uses in the poem Anthem for Doomed Youth. He uses the metaphor of soldiers being killed on the battlefield as cattle that is being slaughtered. They die like cattle, the cattle which are being slaughtered for meat. So it's a very, gory kind of a description that he gives in his poem about the life and death of the soldiers on the battlefield. So Owen returned to front lines in August 1918 and was later killed while leading men across a canal in France. So that is how he died in the First World War. He was leading his troop across a canal in France, and he gets killed in 1918. So if he was enrolled in in the army around somewhere in 1915 when he was 21, it means that he was barely 23 when he died in 1918, November 1918, when finally the World War came to an end. The First World War came to an end. His mother received a notice of his death on November 11th, 1918. The same day, the World War I finally came to an end. The very same day when the First World War came to an end was also the day Wilfred Owen died. So he was too young to die. And in a way, we can attribute the metaphor that he uses for his fellow soldiers in the poem Anthem for Doomed Youth. As you know, he also dies. He is also slaughtered like a cattle in the battlefield. Now, moving on, I have the next poet in front of me is Siegfried Sassoon, a bit senior to Wilfred Owen, and he was a ranking officer in the English army. So if you see, there is a difference in the rank also of Wilfred Owen, who was just a soldier, and Siegfried Sassoon. But Siegfried Sassoon also is very well known for his war poems, his description of war as he witnessed it on the battlefront. And he's a soldier poet and was twice decorated for heroism and earned the nickname Mad Jack. Because even though these soldier poets, they denounced war. That is, they called war as something that is useless and brutal and cruel and meaningless. But still, they were soldiers who fought on the front with a lot of courage and bravery. And Siegfried Sassoon also is a very fine example of that. Twice he has been awarded for his bravery and courage on the battlefield, as you can see it on the slide, on the battlefield. But he is also one of the most impassioned critics of the savagery and waste of World War I. He's someone who is not passionate about fighting. He is definitely passionate about, he is passionate and concerned about his fellow soldiers. That's the reason why he actively participates in war. And normally a soldier gets an award for bravery whenever, he kills many enemies, or he gets hurt in trying to save the lives of fellow soldiers or trying to save the life of his troop by taking intelligent decisions. So Siegfried Sassoon also is a wonderful example of that, twice awarded. But then he is very dispassionate about war itself. If at all he is passionate about anything, it is the description and his perception of war as something that is waste in his poetry. And we will be looking at one of his poems also very soon. Now, talking about his popular works are Attack, The General, and Atrocities that he wrote. He is a British-born aristocrat and satirized the conflict's leaders and described his combat experience in searing detail. So his way of expressing his dispassion for war is by criticizing those leaders, political leaders, who for their greed for power are fighting these wars. If given a chance, the wars could have been avoided. Lots of innocent lives could have been saved. But if we look at history, we will see that there are many greedy leaders for the greed of power. These wars are fought, and in the most brutal manner these wars are fought, because of which not only just innocent soldiers like Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, but also many innocent lives, the common civilians are also killed due to the bombing and shelling that takes place during the world wars. So all this is very, pathetically as well as wonderfully portrayed by these war poets in their poetry. So moving on, Siegfried Sassoon, he flirted with a court-martial by publishing a 1917 letter. Still when the First World War was on, Siegfried Sassoon, he was very critical of the political leaders who were involved in wars. He was very critical of, the countries which were involved in war. and he writes a letter, publishes a letter in 1917 where he talks of war as something, I quote, evil and unjust. It is evil because it serves the purpose of some greedy political leaders, but it is unjust also because there are many innocent soldiers who are dying, there are many innocent people who are losing their lives, there is a lot of property that is public as well as private property which is destroyed due to the world wars. So therefore he writes a letter in which he calls war as something that is evil and unjust, and he is almost on the verge of court martial, because that is what the soldiers are court martialed, suspended from their duties. That could have happened but avoided punishment after fellow poet Robert Graves. Robert Graves is another war poet. We are not dealing with Robert Graves in our here because we don't have Robert Graves on our syllabus. So it is Robert Graves who comes to his बचाव के लिए जो बोलते हैं, in order to save him by arguing that he was suffering from shell shock. Robert Graves gives the verdict that Siegfried Sassoon is very shocked and he is not stable mentally because of the shell shock that he has received. He is physically injured and those injuries are leading to, unstable mental health, because of which he is saying and doing such things. So he should be excused, and that is how he escapes court martial. He escapes punishment. Siegfried Sassoon escapes punishment. So Sassoon would eventually write some 100 anti-war poems before being wounded in the head and removed from active duty in 1918. So Siegfried Sassoon, hundreds of poems. He has quite a long career as a poet, and he has written something like 100, mark the words, anti-war poems. Okay, if Siegfried Sassoon is describing war, and if he describes the battlefield as it is, as a witness of what he sees on the battlefield, it is not because he is trying to portray war as something heroic. Rather, it is because he is trying to make a point that all this war is nothing but it is waste and unjust, right? As he puts it in his letter of 1917, for which he is almost court-martialed and punished. So it is only when he gets hurt in 1918, anyways 1918 the war ends, but before the war ends he is removed from his active duty because he is wounded in the head, right? And after surviving the war he went on to a long career as a poet, novelist and lecturer. Now this is important because being English literature students, we need to know that how versatile the writers can be. Siegfried Sassoon is better known as a war poet, but it is interesting also to know that the later part of his life, once he retires as a soldier, he spends writing novels, he spends time writing many poems, anti-war poems, and as well as he changes his profession to that of a lecturer, going around places and delivering lectures about what he writes and about his experiences of war. Moving on, the third poet that we have on our syllabus is Rupert Brooke. If you look at the image, quite a handsome poet as well as quite a handsome soldier, if you see. Now, Rupert Brooke is very different from Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon. Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon both believe that war is unjust and waste and it is meaningless because there is a lot of loss of life as well as property in it. But Rupert Brooke is different from them because Rupert Brooke is someone who glorifies war and celebrates the heroism of soldiers. And one of his poems that we are going to look at in this lecture series is The Soldier. The Soldier is a very famous poem of Rupert Brooke. It is very concise kind of a poem, but at the same time, it was celebrated by the people of England where, the poem is very patriotic. So it is but natural that he becomes very famous because of this poem. Now, if we look into a bit of biography of Rupert Brooke, unlike many of his contemporaries, Rupert Brooke was already an established literary figure before it took up arms in World War I. Siegfried Sassoon writes post-war 100 anti-war poems. Wilfred Owen, he writes barely 5 poems he is able to write from his experiences of war during war. Whereas Rupert Brooke, he was an established poet before he became a soldier during the First World War, right? He had an established career as a poet before he became a soldier during the First World War. The handsome, I don't need to say that. His picture speaks, his photograph speaks for himself, that his quite handsome, sandy-haired writer had travelled the world and published several acclaimed poems, and he counted Virginia Woolf and William Butler Yeats. W.B. Yeats is another poet that we have studied as a part of our syllabus among his friends and acquaintances. Virginia Woolf is a very famous novelist, modern novelist we are going to study, and W.B. Yeats we have already studied. He is also a modern poet, and both of them, they are quite well known in their fields. Virginia Woolf is very well known as a novelist as well as a feminist, and W.B. Yeats is again very well known as a poet as well as a dramatist also. He is responsible for the establishment of the Abbey Theatre in Ireland. So I will not digress here and not talk about W.B. Yeats. Talking about Rupert Brooke, that is Virginia Woolf and W.B. Yeats, Rupert Brooke counts as his friends, his long list of friends, famous friends that he has as a established poet. He himself is an established poet, so he has quite a large literary circle of friends with him. Now, apart from that, after enlisting in Britain's Royal Naval Division, now you have to pay attention to this also, that each one of them are in diverse defense forces. They are not all of them are soldiers on land. So obviously their experiences of war would be different in that sense also, and their perception of war also is very different from each other, which you will realize when we learn poems by these writers. The first of the poems that we are going to study is Rupert Brooke's The Soldier. So he was enlisted in Britain's Royal Naval Division in 1914. That is when the First World War broke out. And Brooks won national attention for a string of sonnets that expressed the patriotic fervor of a young man at war. So he was quite young, though he was an established poet himself when he was enlisted in the First World War, but still he was, he was quite young still by that time when he participated in the First World War. And he was a part of the Navy, and he has a completely different outlook of war as compared to the other two war poets that we have just seen. And how he is different, he has written a string of sonnets. We are acquainted with sonnets, that sonnets have in all 14 lines, and the traditional sonnet is divided into 8 plus 6, an octet and a sestet, right? Now, another thing that you need to keep in mind, because we are going to look at a sonnet, is that the sonnets were normally written as love poems during the Elizabethan time period. Now, during the modern time period, the sonnets are being written with a different theme, right, and a different expression. So we'll be looking at that, how different it is. But you have to keep this in mind. I'll be referring to this again when we'll be talking about the poems of these poets. So talking about a string of sonnets that express patriotic fervor of a young man at war. So as I already mentioned, that Rupert Brooke glorifies war. He celebrates the heroism of a soldier, a soldier getting wounded in the war, a soldier getting killed in the war. is a kind of heroic act for Rupert Brooke. And that is what he portrays in his poems. And the next one that we are going to see is a poem by Rupert Brooke in this first series of first of the lecture series. Now coming to the poem, that is The Soldier. Rupert Brooke's The Soldier is one of the most famous poems that he has written. He is very well known for this particular poem. It talks about a soldier in the most glorious and heroic manner possible. In a way, you can say that he is celebrating himself as a soldier fighting for his motherland, that is England, right? So most famous of all was The Soldier, which included the verse, I quote, "If I should die, think only of this, of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England." It is this particular line which has immortalized Rupert Brooke and which has made his poem The Soldier one of the most anthologized poem also in English literature. Right? So if you pay attention to the line again, I quote, "If I should die," I written in first person narrative. Of course, we are going to look at the poem, but this particular line has to be emphasized upon, it has to be highlighted upon, that if I should die. Normally, it is very cliched and it is portrayed as if the soldiers, those who enroll into the army or those who enroll as a soldier, they normally have this dream of dying for the motherland or homeland. So here is a poet who is talking about, a soldier in his poem, and he says, "If I should die, think only this of me." He is instructing his audience that you have to think of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field, because it is not necessary that the soldier would be fighting on his, in his own country. Especially during the First World War, the poets, the English soldiers, they were fighting in different lands. So we have earlier seen that Wilfred Owen was fighting in France, right? And he is an English poet. So all these, the First World War was fought in different countries across Europe between the Allies and the Axis, which means that the poets, they were not fighting on the grounds of their homeland, but they were fighting on other grounds in other countries. So our poet here says, on behalf of his soldier, to the people who will remember him as a martyr, that if at all I die, remember that there is some corner of a foreign field, okay, that is forever England. There is a part of a foreign field where the soldier has fallen, where the English soldier has fallen, has died. And that particular piece of land where he has fallen and he has died, that will be a part of England forever. Because that is where a soldier, an English soldier, lies fighting for his country. He has lost his life fighting for his country. How glorious it is, right? We feel very proud when we read lines like that. So that is the effect Rupert Brooke has on his audience through his poetry, war poetry especially. The lines prove to be prophetic when he later shipped out for the Allied invasion at Gallipoli in 1915. Brooke died from blood poisoning caused by mosquito bite and was buried on a Greek island. So that portion of Greek island where Rupert Brooke has been buried, right? You have to consider it as a part of England, because there lies a soldier and a poet of England who lost his life fighting for his country. His untimely demise was widely reported in England. Now, one more thing that I would like to mention is that the First World War is also known for its trench warfare. During the First World War, one of the ways in which the soldiers could save their lives was by digging up trenches and hiding inside those trenches, waiting for their turn of attack. Trenches made it difficult for the enemies to trace the location of the soldiers where they are hiding. Now you have to understand that we are talking about the First World War. The time period is of First World War, 1914 to 1918. We have Rafale as on today, which can easily spot anyone hiding anywhere on land or sea or maybe anywhere in the world. But we are talking about a time period when science had not advanced as much it has advanced today, right? So the trenches were one place of hiding. At the same time, it was also a place where they could store their armament, their equipment, their weapons. It was also a place where the wounded soldiers could recuperate till medical aid was available. It was also a place where the surviving soldiers could hide and wait for the time of attack, right? But then many a times they are unfortunate also, because a bomb or a shell may land in the trenches and may kill the soldiers who are hiding in the trenches. Many a times if they survive in the trenches, as you can see the biography of Rupert Brooke, he didn't die of a shell or a gunshot. He died because of blood poisoning caused by a mosquito bite, right? So the trenches are not exactly a very luxurious or comfortable kind of a place. The trenches can be, infested with mosquitoes. They can be infested with all kinds of insects. They can be infested with snakes also. Try and understand this, that a soldier may not necessarily die only because of shells or bombing or because of gunshots. They may also die because of natural conditions also, because trenches are not, really comfortable. They are very uninhabitable. Apart from that, I would like to also draw your attention to the fact that many a times these soldiers had to spend a lot of time, many days in the trenches before they could get out of those trenches, which meant that if the battle is in full rage, many a times these soldiers, they would not get the food supplies on time, so they have to go hungry. Many a times many of the soldiers would die due to lack of medical attention or due to lack of medicines, because medical supplies cannot reach the trenches due to the raging warfare surrounding them, the constant bombing and shelling that is taking place around them, right? Apart from that, many a times the dead soldiers, the dead bodies may tumble into the trenches, and many a times the dead bodies, they start rotting. Because if the soldiers who are alive try to pull out the dead soldiers, what would happen is that they would be dead in the process if they get out of those trenches. So many a times these soldiers who are still alive, they have to bear with the smell, the stench of rotting dead bodies. And also, mosquitoes, snakes, all kinds of natural hazards also they used to face. So the life is not exactly very comfortable. There is a reason why I am mentioning this, because we are going to look at poems of three of the poems by three of these writers. One of them we are already looking at, Rupert Brooke's The Soldier. So Rupert Brooke, he died of blood poisoning caused by a mosquito bite, and most probably in a trench, or maybe most probably on the battlefield in very uninhabitable circumstances. And it is an untimely demise. No one gets a timely demise. In fact, no one in the world gets a timely demise. Everyone thinks that they have died too early before they could achieve something in life. And especially for soldiers, this is true, right? And I'll come back to this point to prove this point in one of the poems by Wilfred Owen that we have on our syllabus. So in an obituary, obituary is a poem that is written on the death of someone, remembering the person who has died. So in an obituary penned by Winston Churchill, the young poet was hailed as having epitomized the sacrifice of, I quote, the hardest, the cruelest, and the least rewarded of all the wars that men have fought. The First World War was the most cruelest, most brutal, most hardest of the wars that any soldier in the world may have fought. And this is acknowledged by the erstwhile president Winston Churchill also, that it was the most horrible war that has ever been fought. And the young poet, that is Rupert Brooke, he is an epitome of sacrifice, because he fought in this war which is supposed to be very cruel, and he lost his life fighting in this war. Right? Moving on. As I said that we'll be looking at one of the poems, Rupert Brooke's poem. We are going to look at The Soldier. The Soldier is considered to be one of the most famous poems. I already made a point in the earlier slide when I was talking with respect to the earlier slide, that there is this particular line that he has written that has glorified the poem The Soldier, and has glorified Rupert Brooke as a war poet in the history of English literature. Right? So we will be now looking at this poem by Rupert Brooke, The Soldier. So The Soldier is a poem by Rupert Brooke written during the First World War, and the First World War, it was fought between 1914 to 1918. We have to keep that in mind. It is deeply patriotic. Rupert Brooke is deeply patriotic. As a soldier, as a citizen, he is very deeply patriotic and very attached to his motherland, that is England, and that is what is reflected in his poem. It is deeply patriotic and idealistic poem that expresses a soldier's love for his homeland. In this case, it is England, which is portrayed as a kind of nurturing paradise. Obviously, for a poet, for a soldier who is a patriot, who is, who loves his country, would find his own country as a paradise. No wonder that he uses the metaphor paradise for his homeland, that is England. And it is nurturing. Pay attention to the phrase that, Rupert Brooke uses for England. It is a nurturing paradise. Why? Because it is this country where he was born. It is this country which has provided him through his childhood to youth. It is this country which has made him famous as a poet and later as a soldier. Right? So it is a nurturing paradise for him, where he hopes to go back someday, living or dead. Paradise also is used in the context, biblical context of afterlife. Someone who has done good deeds is believed to go to paradise after their death. So for Rupert Brooke, that paradise would be an English paradise. Right? So he will go back to his nurturing paradise, that is England, if he dies in the war. So moving on. Indeed, such is the soldier's bond with England that he feels that his country to be both, it is the country of his origin as well as existence, the place without which his identity wouldn't be there. He is an English poet, he is an English soldier. So he wishes to return alive, or maybe even after he dies, he wishes to return to England, his motherland, and rest there peacefully forever. So the poem was a hit with the public. As I told you, that public normally thinks that a soldier's life is glorified when a soldier becomes a martyr in the war. And Rupert Brooke celebrates this very concept of soldiers fighting heroically in a war and glorifying their death as martyrs. Shaheed, जिसे बोलते हैं हिंदी में. So the poem was a hit with the public, obviously, because it celebrates the life and death of a poet on the battlefield, and it suits the sensibilities of the public back home. It captures the early enthusiasm for the war before the grim realities of the long-term conflict made themselves known. Of course, Rupert Brooke glorifies war, and he celebrates the heroism of a soldier on the battlefield. He is very different from the other two war poets, and we will look at how and why of it very soon. Nowadays, the poem is seen as somewhat naive offering little of the actual experience of war. That said, it undoubtedly captures and distills the particular type of patriotism. It only talks about love for the country. It does not actually talk about the realities of war. So, in that way, present day critics think that in comparison to the other soldier poets, Rupert Brooke's The Soldier is naive, because it portrays the life and death, it glorifies the life and death of a soldier without, as if the soldier does not face any kind of difficulty or cruelty on the battlefield. The poem is completely untouched by the realities of war, and therefore the critics find it very naive. So moving on, the speaker informs his audience what to think if he dies in the war. The poet guides his readers that I am a soldier, I am also a soldier apart from being a poet, and if at all I die while fighting in the battlefield, what you should think of me. He tells them only to consider that a portion of some foreign field will be forever England as a result of his death. I already mentioned previously that Rupert Brooke died in Greece during the war. So that portion of the Greek land wherever he is buried, the dead body of Rupert Brooke is buried, we as readers of this particular poem, we have to consider that part of Greece, the Greek land, as English, because there lies an English poet and an English soldier who died fighting in the war on behalf of his country, for his dear motherland. He died fighting on behalf of his dear motherland. So that part of land where he is buried, even though it is not part of England, you have to consider it to be a part of a patch of England, the land of England, because he lies there and his heart lies in his motherland. So the soldier who was raised and nurtured by his country, England, will be buried in the earth. After he dies, the soldier will go to a peaceful English heaven where he will re-experience all his English memories. So this is the hope and the wish of the poet narrator, the first person narrator that we have in the poem. Some soldier fighting in the First World War, some English soldier fighting in the First World War, that when he dies, he will go back to his peaceful English heaven where he will re-experience his English memories, the memories of being born in England and growing up in England, the happy memories that he has, and he is going to live there. So Rupert Brooke hopes that the day he dies, in fact he portrays it as if the narrator of the poem, that is some English soldier, when he or she dies, will go back to an English heaven where all the memories of England, growing up in England, will be relived. So with that hope, he concludes the poem, and I conclude my lecture here. Thank you so much.